And it's pretty cool to say that, by buying this or this service or whatever, you also get Bitcoin. I mean, it's pretty
Who
cool.
doesn't like that?
Yeah.
Pretty good
It
deal.
is true. It is like a pretty good deal.
A year from now, we hope to be live in a number of these, much larger retailers with, non-Bitcoin folks getting converted to Bitcoin in a very, very easy fashion. So that would be the goal.
Yes, because you wanna get the masses off zero. Is that
correct? Critical, right? Critical. People talk exactly. You nailed it. I mean, people talk about Bitcoin as a life raft, and I think that is unfortunately an increasingly accurate way to view this thing.
Introducing Joltz, Bitcoin rewards as a service for brands of all sizes. Tired of the same old loyalty programs that fail to deliver value and flexibility? Look no further. Joltz has the ultimate solution to transform loyalty for the digital age. With Bitcoin adoption surpassing that of the internet at a comparable point in its growth, early moving brands can gain a significant advantage by offering their customers the opportunity to earn Bitcoin rewards. That's where Joltz comes in. Joltz is a suite of reward products empowering businesses to seamlessly integrate Bitcoin rewards into any environment, be it an e-commerce store, mobile app, web interface, or existing loyalty platform. Joltz handles it all for you. With Joltz, your brand can tap into the endless possibilities of Bitcoin rewards to attract, retain, and engage the digital generation like never before. Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of the podcast series Heartbit. I am your host, Eleonora. I am a radio presenter in Cyprus. I'm a performer, I'm a singer, amongst other artistic things, and I am currently learning about Bitcoin. I'm learning in public, as you may have noticed. This podcast aims to showcase the finest examples of Bitcoiners from all around the world. And today joining us is Stephen Dodge and Ian Major, co-founders of Joltz Rewards. Joltz Rewards is also our first sponsor, actually, and we want to thank you guys for that. Hello, Stephen. Hello, Ian. How are you guys?
Doing great. Thanks for having us. I'm gonna try to get that
on.
cat up and excited in the background. I'm getting jolted about Joltz Rewards.
Nice. I see what you did there. So
I got some movement.
So welcome to Heartbit. I'm gonna get right to it, but I first I wanna ask a little bit about your background. I don't know who wants to start first. Like, how did you get into Bitcoin, Ian or Stephen?
Yeah, I'm happy to kick things off. So I worked as a consultant for a number of years. We had a kind of software as a service platform, worked with very large companies, and we were acquired, funny enough, by MasterCard, the traditional payments giant. And so that gave me, for better and more so for worse, a glimpse into the traditional payments world and, frankly, how sort of inefficient it is in many ways. But what it also gave me a glimpse into is we did a lot of work in our kind of analytics around loyalty and marketing. And so all these big companies have spent all this money over the last, decade plus trying to kind of, digitally transform their loyalty programs. They've invested in things like personalization engines, contextualization engines, all of which is intended to make loyalty smarter, right? How do I get the right offer to the right individual at the right time in the right context? And despite all of this, it's just you time and time again see brands not really getting the benefit they think they're getting from their loyalty programs. And when you dig deeper, you find that consumers are saying the same things that they've been saying for a long, long time now. They're frustrated by the lack of flexibility. They're frustrated by the lack of value. All these little closed silos that they have their little loyalty points in. They can't do very much. And so we'll come back to that as a theme for what we're doing with Joltz Rewards. But that really was part of the impetus for thinking about the intersection of Bitcoin and loyalty. And personally, and I'll let Stephen add onto this, I think we had a pretty similar story into Bitcoin. Steve and I go way back. We're, childhood friends and haven't gotten sick of each other yet. But, go back to the 2017 cycle. I think that was the first time we had really kind of gotten into the space. But at the time, we had a diversified portfolio of crypto assets and we had all these things, right? And so it really wasn't until after that we kind of did the work, did the homework, went down the Bitcoin rabbit hole and realized how special and unique Bitcoin is. And so when we get questions from folks about, well, are you going to introduce other assets, other loyalty assets? It's like, no, we want to put the thing into the hands of people that we think is most, financially empowering for them. And that is unquestionably Bitcoin.
What's Stephen's experience so far with Bitcoin, and how did you get into it? And then slowly we'll talk about Joltz Rewards specifically as well.
So I come from a systems engineer background. I graduated in IT, ended up going down the kind of virtualization and networking path from routing. I thought it was always very interesting to see things from a very high level of how all these systems work together. And so, I ended up working out of my hometown, ended up working at Dell, kind of in the belly of the beast, as it were, as Ian was, with MasterCard. I was working in the heart of the data centers for some of the largest financial institutions, like Bank of America, JP Morgan, Citigroup, and just kind of seeing their overall, day-to-day activities across the US and international to some degree. But I think, what caught my eye in terms of, Bitcoin was, again, probably didn't appreciate it back, when we first saw it. We threw some money at it back in 2017, and I did hear about it in some of my college courses, and early on, just because like decentralized computing does come up, and I thought, this is interesting and appealing, but didn't appreciate it. Wish I had. But ultimately, like 2017, I think is when we really started, looking at it a bit more seriously. And then I had also done some startups and before this as well, and had been working more on how do you improve, customer retention and kind of real-time data insight into customers for brick and mortar. And maybe take one more step back, but I did work at Nordstrom as well throughout college, and I saw, how a company can truly excel and deliver a very, very, very good loyalty experience when it's not even technically tied to like their loyalty program. You have people that shop at Nordstrom that just consider themselves, family, and they don't even have to be a part of the loyalty, reward program that Nordstrom even has. So I think that experience, helped me shape a lot of what we're trying to do here in providing the best customer experience for our end users as they ultimately end up hopefully getting Bitcoin in their hand. Head product up at Joltz. Kind of seeing the overview of day-to-day activities for the product as we build it. Excited to tell you a little bit more about how we're building Joltz and hopefully changing the world.
So whose idea was it exactly? Or was it kind of like you were talking about it and then this idea grew gradually from both of you?
I think we'd say it was a 50-50. It was a joint idea, and we certainly iterated a number of times before landing on loyalty. Like, I think we first became very enamored with this idea of how can you get Bitcoin into the hands of people for doing something they're anyways already doing, right? Yeah. Whether it's making a transaction and getting a loyalty reward, or early on, we were even thinking of how can we help people similar to like a Brave browser type setup where you're earning something for selectively making your data available to advertisers or whatever the case may be. So I mean, we started in a very, very different idea, kind of iterated on that with the community, and ultimately landed on on loyalty as this aha, because, and this sort of gets into this idea of why rewards are so compelling as a vector for mainstream adoption. They have a number of really attractive traits. One is rewards are fairly ubiquitous. I mean, there's hundreds of billions of dollars of value sloshing around the global loyalty economy. This is the value of all the points and rewards, the airline miles, the hotel points, the retailers. All of that value is a very, very large sort of economic pie. And so they're fairly ubiquitous. They're also reasonably low stakes or low barrier to entry, right? Like, not everyone in the world is going to go and get a Fold card. We love Fold. We love things like, the Bitcoin company, and there's certainly others that are doing Bitcoin rewards, but it is simply not the case that, everyone in the world is not going to kind of get into one of those systems. And so what you need to do instead is bring Bitcoin rewards to all these other different environments where loyalty is already happening. And then finally, there's this important element of, from a consumer behavior standpoint, where people are actually earning these rewards. And that's an important distinction versus simply gifting, right? Many of us on this call and many listening probably have experience with like gifting friends or family members some Bitcoin. And that's great and that's important. But what we've seen, at least personally, is that there's not always the same level of kind of ownership that results from that, right? If I'm just being gifted some Bitcoin, I probably don't care about it that much. But if I've earned it, technically I've done something. And that kicks off this beautiful virtuous cycle of, wow, now all of a sudden I have this thing, I want to learn more about it, right? And the more I learn about it, the more I want to accumulate. And the more I accumulate, the more I want to learn about it. And so it's this kind of virtuous cycle that maybe you can, attest to, Eleonora, in your journey.
For sure. I think I think right now is a good time for you guys to explain to us what exactly is Joltz Rewards and how does somebody, like a consumer, benefit from it?
Yeah, so really Joltz is just a suite of Bitcoin rewards capabilities for merchants. We have kind of two strategic pillars we deliver this through. So you could think of, an e-commerce store. Merchant signs up or installs our app. They have a Shopify app marketplace, or if you're familiar with like WooCommerce, there's another app marketplace. You can do custom integrations and other things of that nature. But they would go in, find Joltz, install it in their app, within their admin dashboard, and then they would have these kind of 3 core capabilities where they can go in, basically craft a reward. So, think of something that a business typically does, which is like discounts. You go straight to a website. It's like, hey, put in, an email, get 10-20% off right off the bat. We approach it as like, okay, let's try to save you a little bit of margin and offer this new option to your consumers. Instead of just giving 10% off right out of the gate to your customer, why don't you offer 5% back in Bitcoin and save 5%, but also just see what the opt-in rate is, and see if it there's other things you can measure too, but like see how that is like a base point of how that can impact your bottom line as a business. And then we have a bunch of kind of, I'll say, filters or kind of qualifiers, if you will, of what could what a consumer would need to do to earn certain amounts of Bitcoin. So we can get pretty granular within the app, where you could be like, okay, I want them to spend $50 and they get 10% back. But if they spend $100, they get 15% back. Or you could do like a fixed amount. I spend $100. It's like a tier 1 award. I get 10,000 sats. It's just a fixed amount. If I spend $200, I get 50,000 sats. You can do like per product. Per product SKU. So
I'm really sorry to interrupt, because it's a lot of information, and I'm just trying to understand, like, to be very clear on it. So basically, so what businesses, because you talked about the benefits that a merchant might have, but for me as a consumer, first of all, where do I go? Like, what shops do I go to in order to, and is the Joltz Rewards program something that I have to download beforehand? Is it something that I will just automatically be presented of that when I go to make a purchase? Like, how, because I think we dug deep a little bit, but I think let's take things from the beginning, or maybe the consumer's point of view first.
Yeah, so the consumer's point of view, you basically do nothing different. You just go on the site. So really what we were trying to get to there was just like the merchant can configure like a wide array of what, rewards that they're kind of already used to, but they would just be like Bitcoin back. So when you go on, for example, one of our partners is Bitcoin trading cards, just simple trading cards, but Bitcoin focused. You go on the site, there's a little banner. It says, hey, you can earn 5% back on any purchase. You check out, shop just as normal. And then the second you're done paying, you don't have to pay in Bitcoin. You can pay in fiat. Again, if they offer, Bitcoin payment, you can obviously pay in Bitcoin. But once you're done checking out and the order or the transaction is confirmed, we calculate what that 5% back would be. And you just get a little pop-up modal and it says, hey, would you like to claim your 5% back in Bitcoin? You say yes. If you do, you get an email that says, hey, here's your reward. That basically authenticates you. It says, okay, the email that you used to submit this purchase is now the one that's tied to your Bitcoin reward. And then you have the option to either just keep it in your quote unquote account, if you want to call it that, or you can withdraw it to a Lightning wallet if you're, savvy enough to have that already. But yeah, you don't have to change any behavior, just shop as normal, opt into it.
And the prices of the products are exactly the same. It doesn't matter that I'm going to get the reward in the end. Is
correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. No app required, no installations, just shop as normal. And then you basically are just opting into the reward that would be, instead of points, it's sats.
It's sats. And I suppose for people like me, for example, that are new in Bitcoin, they would be like, oh, okay, so I've got sats. What is that? How can I use it? But how easy do you think, I have so many questions, but how easy do you think to get somebody who is not involved in Bitcoin to actually explore this newly earned sats, and figure out what they do and what they can do with it?
Yeah, I think so too, as you are, what did you say, learning in public? I think we very much are as well, right? And that's like the big nut to crack here, is how do we make Bitcoin rewards mainstream? How do we cross that chasm, which I really don't think, has been done. And so we're trying to kind of pave our way towards that. With that being said, even in some of our existing customers already, many of whom are concentrated within the sort of Bitcoin world, you still even then have quite a large spectrum. You have some folks that are very, very familiar already with Bitcoin, but you have some folks who are maybe very new to it. And this is kind of their first exposure. And we've gotten a lot of really good feedback that says, hey, wow, like this was a really easy process. It was tied to the same email that I anyways have to put into my, to make the purchase on the merchant's website. And so people value that, I don't have to have a pre-existing wallet of any kind, although we ultimately want to encourage people, in that direction. So I think thus far we've gotten good feedback from those that are newer to the space. And, we've got like a little guide that is linked in the email that you receive following a purchase that says, hey, here's the step-by-step guide. Hey, are you new to Bitcoin? Here's what a Satoshi is. Hey, are you new to the Lightning Network, et cetera, et cetera. And there's certainly other projects that are doing like onboarding, let's just say. So, hey, you want to gift someone sats for the first time. Here's kind of a nice workflow that, walks them through that process. And, oh, by the way, you hit on something which is important. What can I do with these sats once I receive them, right? Well, you can go to Bitrefill and, buy a gift card of anything, you could go. So incorporating all of that into this onboarding, I think, is really important. And so far we're getting, good feedback. But what we want to keep doing is go further and further from the kind of like community center where we naturally, have started. So stay tuned, and we shall see.
What shops do you have on board, or what brands do you have on board at the moment? Because I think that's also another good point. Obviously, you're at the start of it. You want to, expand and go mainstream and all that. But I think, if I'm not mistaken, it's only like Bitcoin brands at the moment, which makes it difficult for people like me to get involved, for example, because I wouldn't necessarily go explore Bitcoin shops or something like
Correct.
that. I suppose the aim, which is what you're ultimately saying, is that you want to maybe expand to other brands as well, like more mainstream ones.
Yes, so we have some exciting developments. We can't share all the details just yet, but you're absolutely right. Where we've really started, as a strategic decision, is being close to home in the Bitcoin world, get the brand awareness, get some revenue in the door, all that good, all those good things for the business. But I'm pleased to say we are now in discussions with some large kind of retail conglomerates in Latin America, interestingly enough. And these are big entities. Think, big 1,000+ store grocery chains, or telecom providers, or retailers, right? So very kind of mainstream businesses that have really no affiliation whatsoever with Bitcoin. And what's fascinating is that these entities have already started on their journey of either beginning to or are working towards integrating Bitcoin Lightning payments, right? So, for those listening that maybe are a little bit newer, Lightning, of course, sits on top of Bitcoin and makes Bitcoin payments instant. And so for the merchant, there's a lot of great properties. You get to avoid the 3 to 4% card processing fees that you typically have to pay. That's a huge deal. You get instant settlement, no cashbacks. So that's interesting. And what pairs perfectly well with Lightning payments? Lightning Rewards, which is what Joltz is doing. And so as you see the adoption of Bitcoin Lightning payments, that's sort of we're able to kind of ride in that wake and add on rewards as this sort of value-added service. So that's a very, very exciting development. Again, that's going to unfold over the coming months, but I think we're just now starting to see what that picture looks like in terms of at least where this starts. And interestingly, you're going to see it start in these geographies that are more along the curve of thinking of Bitcoin as a medium of exchange, right? It's not just something that I kind of hodl in my, cold storage or my cold card or my foundation passport and, never sees the light of day. Like, that's important for your long-term savings. But in these geographies where Bitcoin is already beginning to be used as a medium of exchange, that's where we're seeing interest in incorporating these rewards. So that's something that's really exciting, hot off the press, that we'll I'm sure have some updates on as we go forward.
I was just going to say, from the merchant perspective that you asked, like, who do we have? Like, even though these are more Bitcoin or even some to a degree like more just crypto related in the space, we do see that even if there's like an apparel company, for example, the rewards perform pretty well. But even as we push this out into non-Bitcoin apparel companies, the behaviors are kind of generally the same. So it's at least allowing us to learn of what are the pricing strategies, what is the merchant thinking of, how do they think about rewards as compared to like BTC trading cards, or just going to start name dropping the ones we're working with, like Shamory, with the kids game and education. We work with Mr. Satoshi, which is great. But you just kind of see like what rewards mean to different types of brands or merchants in different segments. So even though they are Bitcoin focused to start, and again, just to name a few of our early customers, it's it's good that helps us approach these other brands that are not 100% in Bitcoin or know about the space, and kind of delivery method in which we'll get to them is through the likes of like the Shopifys and the WooCommerce through the App Store. They can find this easy one-click install app and start offering rewards. But we're hoping to have it in the Shopify and WooCommerce App Store within the next month or so. There's like an approval process, but that would be how it gets to the entities and merchants that are not just strictly Bitcoin. Because one-to-one selling is not easy. It's much easier to have an app that people can publicly find.
And also it's always important to remember that when we say rewards, we actually mean Bitcoin. Like people can use that to buy stuff. It's not points. It's not, because you hear rewards and sometimes you might associate that with points that lead nowhere, or you have to have like thousands of them in order to get like, I don't know, something, a small amount.
I think most people do, and they probably roll their eyes, which is like why we're hoping like Bitcoin kind of markets itself. They're like, most people have heard of Bitcoin, and while, as Ian said, most people may be thinking our geographical like number go up, which is fine, but like it markets itself and people understand it, I think, or at least have heard of it. So like, oh, I can earn this instead of these useless points at this one brand that I might shop with again. Who knows? Or maybe I do shop a lot, but I'd much rather have an asset that could appreciate in value, or I can go and then spend elsewhere.
And I remember in your website, I took a note of it. It says because I think this is very important for merchants, over 90% of Bitcoiners would switch brand loyalty to earn Bitcoin as a reward. So that's really important. I think it's really important for the businesses to hear that. Do you want to elaborate a little bit on that?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean,
one of our go-tos.
There's a very like compelling story behind, right? Like we go to merchants and we describe this emerging consumer segment. Number one, Bitcoin adoption is growing faster than that of the internet at a comparable point in the growth curve. So you have this extraordinary growth, right? Yes, you have some volatility when priced in fiat along the way, but the meme zoom out, right? It's pretty clear what's happening. This is a genie that does not go back in the bottle. This is an idea whose time has come. So you have this massive growth, right? And then you also have, and this is going to vary a little bit depending on the geography, depending on the merchant, but there's some really good research out there from companies like Backed that have looked at, kind of Bitcoin adopters and have found that on average, these folks, not surprisingly, tend to skew younger. However, despite their relative youth, they also tend to skew a little bit higher income. They tend to be pretty savvy consumers. So you have all these very attractive traits wrapped up in this very rapidly growing consumer segment. And then finally, as you pointed out, these are folks that tend to be highly motivated. And so that 90% statistic came from some of our own research where, like people will meaningfully change behavior if it means the ability to earn Bitcoin rewards. And so for a merchant that's kind of dipping their toes in, right? Because a lot of this is chicken and the egg. It's like, well, for Lightning payments, like I don't want to accept Bitcoin as payment if no one's willing to pay, Bitcoin. I don't know if I'm willing to give Bitcoin as a reward if none of my customers want it as a reward. So you do have to kind of like bootstrap this process, but that's a very simple way to kind of get in the door and say, look, you're attracting this new, rapidly growing, highly attractive consumer segment. And increasingly, your existing base is going to catch on to this. And really all you're doing is giving them another option. You're adding utility to your loyalty program by giving more flexibility, more value, more optionality. And that's good for everyone. That's good for all your existing members and the members that you might attract simply by doing this.
Yes, you said, I can't remember how you phrased it exactly, but what you just said now about loyalty, they're adding to their already
Yes.
the programs that they have already. And I want to go back to what Stephen was saying in the beginning, and I interrupted him. I'm sorry, Stephen, about the merchant side of the story. So say I'm a merchant and you want to approach me with this idea, with this service, Joltz Rewards. What would you say to me in order to get me on board? Say, I don't know. I don't think it's difficult to get Bitcoin companies on board. But say I'm a mainstream company. What would you say to me to make me join?
Yeah, I mean, we typically go right to those points, or those points that we kind of listed earlier. Your loyalty program is probably, while you think someone's successful, is probably got some pain points and some issues. And again, these consumer pain points are pretty repeated throughout the last several years. And so we go, hey, like, why not provide more optionality? Here is this data. We've proven it with these consumers that they will all in all switch allegiance to your brand if you were to offer this type of reward. This is an attractive, growing consumer segment that you want to have on board. It's just going to get bigger. And all in all, like too, there's like, it's not too much risk. We always say that, for at least the e-commerce play, you're not going to pay anything unless you've actually paid some reward out. So there's no upfront cost. We're not going to charge you X amount per month.
Oh,
It's
yes.
just,
I wanted to ask about that. Who actually
Mhm.
pays for the rewards? Like, where do they come from? Is it the
Yeah. So I
actual?
mean, the merchant pays for it all in all, but they just pay us in fiat. Just like, again, that it's, you can go in and kind of maybe set like a budget cap if you want. But we would like alert you if it was going above, $500 a month. Again, if it's going well, I don't know why you'd want to stop it, but that's kind of how we, figured it out to do in the Shopify and kind of WooCommerce app. But yeah, the idea is like you would again calculate that reward in real time at the time of purchase. So let's just say it's $5 worth of Sats, 5% back in Bitcoin on $100 purchase. At that point in time, we calculate the rewards, whatever, $5 of Sats is at that point in time is how much the consumer gets. And then in aggregate over 30 days, let's say you gave out 500 in Bitcoin rewards. We would just then go back and invoice you for the $500 rewards payouts and then a 5% fee on top of that. Our pricing for enterprise is a little different, but for the kind of base level payment option from a merchant's perspective, that's how it is.
Okay.
That makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, it's still a lot of information for me, so I'm taking I'm taking a little bit of my time to
You're good. Yeah, I would say like maybe another way to frame it too is just like until the consumer actually withdraws their Sats to their own wallet, if they wish to do that, they're really just kind of SQL Sats. It's just like a database entry on the back where like this email address that bought, from this vendor or this merchant has, this amount of Sats. And once you've, again, at that point in time when they're calculated, like that is the amount of Sats you will have, the dollar value of that might adjust as the, pair, fluctuate over time. But, that's how much you would have kind of in your little Joltz dashboard, if you will. And then the second you do withdraw it, those Sats would then come out of our node, the Joltz, where we have several, Lightning nodes that have Sats in it. And it is pretty wild. Like you'll see like some brands, we can see it. People will buy, we'll see that, the data will come in, hit our endpoint, and within like 30 seconds, people are withdrawing their Bitcoin. So we are, again, unique in that right as well as there's a lot of other companies like, again, Lolly, Fold, they're all great. But we are the only people that allow you to instantly claim and own your Bitcoin. There's no batching, there's no 30-day wait period, any of that. You just get your Sats.
But you have to. I'm sorry if we've already covered this, but you have to download. Like once you have, say you buy something from a shop, and then you see that you've earned this amount of Sats, then you can put that in your wallet and use it
if you choose. Yep, if you choose. You don't have to. If not, it'll just, your balance will keep accruing as you shop with more brands that use Joltz, kind of like Smile. If you've ever seen like smile.io, you can just kind of think of us as like the Bitcoin version of that, but it's just a pretty common referral or rewards program, I'll say, and service for e-commerce. But yeah, it's like if you don't like explicitly withdraw those Sats to your own wallet, it'll just stay, and you can authenticate into the Joltz reward dashboard, and you'll just see your balance as you shop more and more. And we can see that, some people don't want to withdraw, they just keep them in there. Now merchants can like decide if they want to kind of sunset those points. We let the merchant make that decision. We think if you've earned the Sats, you should always get them. But yeah, they'll just kind of remain a kind of a row, a query in the data table until you pull it out, or an entry in the data table. Sorry.
You said Joltz Rewards dashboard. Is that going to be at the? I'm sorry, I'm not very tech savvy, but is it going to be like at at the address bar of the website, like of the website of the merchant? Is it going to be an app? I know there's an app coming too, right? So do you want to?
Yeah, there's probably two ways you could think of doing it. I'll try to make it like simple for the first one, but you can just think of it as like really, again, I'd love to maybe show like how Smile does it, but like, yeah, one day you could imagine it kind of like this, kind of like how you see the chats at the bottom of like an e-commerce or a website. You go there and it's like, do you want to chat with support? We could very well see it being like, click here to authenticate to your Joltz Rewards, balance. And, you would just see that kind of across brands who have Joltz installed on their site. But as of right now, yeah, it's just like you get the email or you get the post checkout, like you're done shopping, you get the pop-up and you say, I want to claim my rewards, get the email in your inbox. And then the second you click that, that's basically what's authenticated you. There's no passwords, there's no nothing. It's just like that link will take you to Joltz Rewards. Then you're kind of unique. You're unique. Yeah. You just use your email to basically authenticate, every time over and over. And then that's where just the rewards, kind of sit and so you take them out.
Okay. So what steps have you taken to market this idea, the service you provide? I know you've been to Bitcoin Miami conference. If you want to talk to us a little bit about your experience.
Yeah, it was
great.
It was a blast. We had a great time down in Miami. We basically had 2 little mini reward stations. So this was like literally a small stand with a little tablet that sat on it.
Is that the spin the wheel?
That's the spin the wheel. And so this was admittedly a little bit of an experimental in-person version. Because our main products are all kind of geared towards online or e-commerce, et cetera. But we were working with 2 of our partners, Bitcoin Trading Cards and then Panties for Bitcoin, both of whom had booths in the bazaar area of the conference. And so, we had these 2 little reward spinners sitting next to those booths, such that when someone made a purchase at the booth, they could then come and, spin the wheel, and the wheel wasn't necessarily connected to the specific purchase amount. It was just kind of a random amount of sats that they could earn. And then boom, they get the QR code, they can scan it with their phone and get their reward.
I saw somebody earned 10,000 sats. Sorry, not 10, 100,000.
Couple 100,000.
Yes. Yeah. So we had, I think, 2 people won the bit that was the biggest kind of slice on the biggest reward on the wheel. So that was very exciting. And yeah, it was just very cool to see people. And again, at the conference, I mean, there is a wide range, big spectrum of, again, people who are very, very, very familiar with the space, very, very familiar with Bitcoin and Lightning and all these different things. And others who are, hey, I just want to learn about some of this stuff. And so those were those were the perfect sort of guinea pigs to, hey, use this. What do you think? And so I think overwhelmingly we got, really, really good feedback. It was good to see how people, engaged with it. We definitely learned things of how we can, improve that for future conferences and future kind of in-person events. But those will largely be a little bit more about kind of, brand awareness, et cetera. And so as Stephen somewhat alluded to earlier, I mean, number one, we really haven't done a whole lot of marketing yet, which is nice. We've benefited from some of the word of mouth, some of the users posting things on Twitter about their, the rewards they're getting by shopping at different partners, et cetera. And so now as part of, this podcast and this partnership is really when we're starting to formalize a bit more of a marketing push, now that we've kind of got a pretty well-oiled, product. And now that we're trying to kind of expand to some of these other areas, we're getting the word out through things like this. There's also a number of different kind of channels we'll be using to market towards kind of online, e-commerce merchants, through things like, you can literally run Shopify store ads to promote or, bid for keywords around loyalty or rewards, so that if a merchant is looking for different reward solutions, you can come up in one of the early kind of search results. So lots of different things like that we have in the queue. But yeah, we were excited to kind of kick all of that off with today's discussion.
Cool.
So too, some of that's on purpose, though, just to reiterate, it's not like we didn't want to, but in order to make the best, be able to basically go back and look at the pilots we've run with these merchants. We don't want, all this other noise coming in. So if we're making a bunch of announcements on, Twitter and social and people are going and buying, how are we able to, go then say that Bitcoin rewards as an option versus a discount was really the cause of people going and, the driver of people making these purchases and opting into Bitcoin rewards. So we do kind of fly under the radar on purpose as we roll these rewards programs out with, these customers, just so we can get a clear cut or as clear as possible. Okay, this is when we introduce the Bitcoin rewards. this is the impact it had on your business. Because again, if it doesn't have a bottom line impact to the business, as many Bitcoin companies would probably be just fine running Bitcoin rewards always on, no matter what. For other companies, we needed to be able to go back and be like, no, like when they introduced this and these types of, reward offerings, however they configured them, it moved the bottom line, X percentage, on purchase per ticket, whatever. Like customers came back more often, more frequently. They bought more items. So there was, some planning behind that. But yeah, we're full tilt now into making this a well-known thing.
Do you know if there's any other loyalty programs like that for this market specifically? And if so, what makes you special?
Yeah, there's certainly others, and we've kind of alluded to some of them, and we're huge fans and users of these services ourselves. So there's what we might call like pure affiliate plays, like Lolly. So Lolly is like a browser extension. You kind of install in your browser, and you could go to their little dashboard and find different merchant offers. And they are like literally acting as an affiliate. So let's say that Adidas gives all their affiliates 5% kickback for traffic that the affiliates can drive to Adidas. Lolly can turn around and give 3% of that, or whatever it is, to their users in Bitcoin. And so that was really where the whole Bitcoin rewards story started, is with that type of model. And it's a great model. And, we are big fans of Lolly. Then you started to have things like card products. So for those that are familiar with like the Fold card, there's other, kind of broader crypto exchanges that have like cashback cards as well, where the cashback that you're getting is, maybe Bitcoin or whatever. And that's really nice as well, right? So I could go, put gas in my car and swipe my Fold card and get, some Bitcoin back. So all of that is nice, but notice that each of these examples, you have to sort of be already in their environment. You have to either download their app, you have to get a payment card, right? That's not a trivial ask for a lot of people, especially when we're talking about mainstream. And so we're trying to take what we see as one of the next logical steps to this Bitcoin reward story, which is to bring these reward capabilities to the existing reward environments, whether that's an e-commerce store, as we've talked a lot about in this conversation, whether that's maybe I'm a merchant with I already have a mobile app, and I want to just plop in Bitcoin rewards as an option for my users, whether it's a traditional loyalty platform like Smile, right? There's no reason why we couldn't integrate with Smile. Why would Smile go and build their own internal Bitcoin expertise? They could just use our API to plop it right in. So those are all the kind of diverse environments where we're building technology to be able to drop Bitcoin rewards in. So that kind of like Bitcoin rewards as a service model that we might call it, is a different sort of flavor than what we've seen before. And the kind of second differentiator, I would say, is when we say Bitcoin rewards, and certainly the examples we've talked about in this conversation have really revolved around like the Bitcoin back. That's the bread and butter. That's the typical one. However, excitingly, with some of the new developments around things like Taproot assets, there's RGB. There's all these different ways now where you can create assets on Bitcoin. And so what does that mean? What does that look like? Yeah. Imagine, so, think of today how you fly on a certain airline and you get airline miles, right? You accrue airline miles. And sometimes those airlines will have partnerships with maybe a hotel. And so you could take those miles and redeem them for like a hotel stay, maybe, the 3-night stay for 2-night price, something like that. Yeah. So you have these like federations, you have these partnerships in the traditional loyalty space. And to the consumer, it's okay, I guess. Behind the scenes, it's a nightmare. Like these systems do not talk well to each other. And so there's a variety of friction points along the way that basically suck value out of the, so the miles that I convert into a hotel stay, while it seems like I'm getting a good deal, what's actually happening is it's pretty inefficient. And it's because of the technology that's being used behind the scenes to try and glue together these closed loyalty silos. And so for the same reason that you hear someone like Jack Mallers espouse the benefits of something like the Lightning Network as this open network, right? It's not a closed network. It's this open interoperable network. Now, all of a sudden, you could have, for example, fungible loyalty tokens minted as Taproot assets. I know we're getting into some, technical jargon, but it is simply to say you can now create new assets on Bitcoin that benefit from the same open network effects as Lightning payments. And so now I could potentially exchange those miles into a hotel stay in a much more frictionless way. And so you're starting to now get, okay, there's Bitcoin, the asset, which is incredibly valuable for all the reasons we've, discussed and have been discussing, but there's also Bitcoin, the network, and Bitcoin, the technology that can help solve for pain points and friction points in the traditional loyalty world, I think would be the kind of high level takeaway. So like, that's a very exciting new frontier that we are only just beginning to scratch the surface of. But that is a frontier that we at Joltz think we're at the very kind of cutting edge for. So again, that's a little bit probably down the road, but that just gives you a glimpse as well into like some of the other possibilities when we talk about Bitcoin loyalty and Bitcoin rewards.
That's cool. Does Stephen want to add anything to that? Although
no, I would probably just clarify, like a lot of people immediately think, you'll depending if you're like a hardcore Bitcoiner or not, but I mean, there's some of the assets, if you will, whatever they come on Bitcoin, they come with some feedback from the community. But I think, the way that we position this is like, these are digital collectibles that are literally derived from actual business value between the customer and the business. Like, this is not just some, NFT, if you will, or some collectible that a brand can go and just mint 10,000 of them and then go, sell them. For Joltz, at least, the way we interact and engage with these merchants and brands alike, these are going to be, again, a way that you earn for your proof of work, if you will, that you've earned, some level or status with this brand, and therefore you get the perks that this asset represents or, gives you access to. So I would say, before people roll their eyes or, know a little more about what we're talking about when it comes to Taproot assets, this is the approach that we will take and, hold to. This is, driving business value, and these are, assets that are derived, from something sound, not from just making stuff up.
Well, maybe just as a final example and top up to that, right? I mean, a lot of people are familiar with Starbucks. Starbucks for well over a decade now has really set the standard when it comes to loyalty, like mass appeal loyalty. And interestingly enough, they announced late last year their kind of Odyssey, what they're calling their Odyssey initiative. And so this is their Web3 extension to their company rewards program. And the reason that's notable is like Starbucks this is not a test. This is not like a dip their toes in. This is a full sort of throated extension of their company crown jewel, which is their rewards program. And so consumers that opt into this can now, they can do different things. They can play games or take quizzes or visit different stores, whatever the case is, and earn these digital collectibles that unlock new exclusive experiences. Maybe it's a virtual espresso martini making class or whatever the case is. And so Starbucks, interestingly, has chosen Polygon in the Ethereum world to build all this on. Right. And they're espousing, it's because it's, so green and all this stuff. And so we look at that and we say, well, like there should be a kind of Bitcoin competitor in the ring for that use case of loyalty collectibles. Think of me being able to, I used to be a big sneakerhead. right? I used to love, collecting cool, Nike shoes and whatever. And, a big problem is like when you have a new release for some product like that, there's probably going to be way too much demand for the supply of that new product that's being introduced. And so what if I could have some sort of verifiable digital asset that allows me early access to a certain part of their website that grants me exclusive access to be able to get that item, before everyone else, right? Like those are the types of use cases that we see for the kind of digital collectibles. And again, we want to do all of that on a Bitcoin technology stack because we now have and are getting the ability to do that, which is really, really exciting.
Yeah, and I'd like to emphasize that, a bit more on the, the Starbucks is huge. Like again, like you said, this is a
They don't
behemoth.
miss. Starbucks does
They
not
don't
miss. Right?
Yeah, and they have chosen Polygon. Like that is again, like you could see why there's some people in the space that say like, hey, like we need to be able to build some of these capabilities, in on tangential to whatever you want to put it for Bitcoin. And like, I somewhat agree. It's like if you have too many kind of not first movers, but just big enough entities starting to go towards one thing, then you'll probably see a lot of them gravitate towards that. And for us, it's for all the wrong reasons. But given that Lightning, I think alone can stand up against something like a Polygon in terms of obviously like speed and just like the openness of the network, and obviously being anchored to Bitcoin is a plus. That's something that we want to be able to take and be like, why would you build this, anywhere else? That was kind of one of our first things. Like, why would you build on, this kind of network or protocol that could one be deemed, a security with the whole SEC and their kind of oversight that they're kind of clamping down on recently. But two, why would you want to build it on anything other than the most secure network that there is, which is Bitcoin? So, we want to make that, pretty abundantly clear that, there's really only one shot at this, and the Starbucks has already taken theirs, and it's on Polygon. Like maybe you can change that, maybe you can't, but we want to make sure that the next big mover is doing something on Bitcoin.
So there's no risk for anyone. I mean, joining
for building.
For back to specifically Joltz Rewards. I mean, if you want to get more merchants on board, is there any risk for them?
So that's part of what we try and strip away, right? We talk first about all the upside they could get, and then we say, oh, and by the way, we can implement this for you in a way in which you don't have to touch Bitcoin, you don't have to interact with it in any way, you don't have to. I mean, it's as if you're paying any other
money
service
transmitter
provider that you already use, right? And so in that sense, it's very, very low risk. I suppose the one thing that could come in, and I won't go through like the gory math of how this works, but there are some accounting nuances, particularly for like big enterprises, big merchants that, for example, like a loyalty reward that can later be redeemed is technically a liability to that merchant, right? So let's say that you earn $5 worth of points, of loyalty points. I don't recognize that as revenue right away because it is something that I owe you in a future point in time. And so when you do, let's say a month from now, you redeem those 5 points of value to get $5 worth of whatever merchandise, then that is the point at which I recognize that as revenue and extinguish that liability that I had previously owed you. And so a lot of merchants will say, oh my gosh, Bitcoin, it's this very volatile thing. So like I need to be able to very tightly track the size of that liability on my balance sheet. But the good news is like, if you're doing this in the right way, if you're setting aside the correct number of Satoshis for that reward that we just discussed, both sides of the balance sheet are going to move in lockstep. So again, I don't want to get into like the nerdy, kind of math behind the accounting, but that certainly is one element of risk, I suppose, that it is it's disruptive. It's disruptive to how the merchant typically thinks about accounting for loyalty. given that you're now introducing something that historically has had quite a lot of volatility. But if you're managing it in the right way, there really is there's no risk of the merchant suddenly being, blindsided by, oh my gosh, we owe all this value that we haven't already ensured, we have accounted for and that we have prepared for.
I'd say maybe the other piece that's like to think through, maybe not risk, but just like making sure that the Bitcoin reward offering, is, thought of thoroughly. You can't just like introduce something and expect it to, just take off. We kind of saw some of this with maybe some of the higher end brands, for example. They would do like these NFT launches, which were, again, kind of like a riding the wave thing, but you would see, oh, we did this collection, and like some of them would do very well. I'm trying to think of like a really good one, maybe the Liquid Death one. Liquid Death does these kind of NFTs that, are really cool and their audience likes it. And then there's maybe like a bad example of someone who doesn't typically miss, which was like Formula One. There's some other ones too, but like Formula One last year did like NFT collections for the Miami Grand Prix. It's like inaugural race. And it was like 5,000 like engine sounds or something for an absurd amount of money. And just no one bought them. So I think like you do want to make sure as a brand, if you're introducing Bitcoin rewards to your end customer, that you have a reason behind it, like not like, hey, we're just trying to save margin, kind of all the reasons we said, like while those are great, like you definitely want to make sure you're, approaching and delivering this to your customer in a relatable way, or, giving them a reason. So we do try to help, craft that message as well a bit. But yeah, I think that's maybe like something the brand should think through if, pretty deeply if they're gonna do this. To make sure it's successful.
What brands do you what would be like a dream brand? I can imagine for you to get on board.
Federal Reserve.
I can imagine for Ian, it would be Nike, most probably.
Right. Exactly right. You've nailed it. That's number one on my list. Yeah, no, I think there's huge mega size hotel, the hospitality world is very, very promising because there's just so much. It's promising and not promising. It's promising because there is so much room for disruption there. These are some of the biggest contributors to that hundreds of billion-dollar loyalty economy we were talking about earlier. It's a challenge because they're using some of the most archaic systems behind the scenes that can be difficult to integrate with. But I would say, think of like the Marriotts of the world, maybe in the hotel realm. Think of I spent a couple years actually in living in Dubai, and so I flew Emirates Airlines a lot, which is very kind of near and dear to me. So like think of like an Emirates Airlines incorporating this into their Skywards program. And then probably the other third category would be like big retailers. Think of I don't know, big kind of electronics retailer, or it could be anything for that matter. It could be a grocery, grocery chain retailer. Those are probably the three categories for which rewards are just kind of already very much in the psyche. And our value proposition to those types of entities is like, look, just add it as an option, right? Just add it in as an option. We make that process very, very easy for you. You let people opt into doing it. You're not forcing it on any of your customers, and you see what works, and you see what the impact and benefit is, and you go from there.
And it's pretty cool to say that, by buying this or this service or whatever, you also get Bitcoin. I mean, it's pretty.
Who doesn't like that?
Yeah.
Pretty good deal.
It is true. It is like a pretty good deal. I mean, again, you'd be surprised like what entities are interested in this. Like, even though, again, some of them, like even within the Bitcoin space, they're like, yeah, like Bitcoin rewards, like, you wouldn't think it would make sense for this type of entity, but they're all thinking and looking at it. So yeah, it's weird. I mean, for me, it's probably like someone that's going to drive mass adoption. Like I want something that's going to, really move the needle, or maybe, I don't know, maybe even reframing it as like someone like some brand, kind of like Ian said, that they have a customer base that's just going to get it. Because, there could be like I would probably think of like a Nordstrom, for example, I think would be great just because from their loyalty perspective. But, like what percentage of Nordstrom customers at this point in time are really going to, get that and grasp it and, opt into it. maybe not as much, you never know. But yeah, I think like a brand that has skews a little bit younger, as we said earlier, so to make sure that that opt-in is, pretty high signal.
How long have you been doing this? When was Joltz Rewards born exactly?
I'll say technically we kind of pivoted out of the last idea of what we originally thought, kind of what we alluded to earlier was like late last fall, we really started building towards this Bitcoin rewards as a service service really towards the end of last year. And our first pilots launched like the last week of December, first kind of weeks of January. And they didn't all start at the same time. So again, we wanted to do like a good 3 to 4 months of like getting data so we could compare to what was before. So we're really getting to the end of those kind of first initial pilots. But I'd say like this year is when we kind of really formally launched.
Okay, that's great. And what about the app? Talk to me about the app. What because right now you have the website and the app is not ready yet. Is that correct?
So the merchant side, yeah, so we have like our own kind of standalone web app, but we again realized like good luck getting merchants to like peel off of Shopify and go to your specific web app. So yeah, the app is in the submission process. They're looking at it. Same
So
would go
not,
for
sorry to
e-commerce.
interrupt. It's not for the consumers. It's for the merchants.
Yeah, we're more of like a B2B to C, if you will. Like we don't mind standing kind of in the back end. Like we have a consumer facing dashboard as of right now, but to maybe take a step back, yeah, like the merchant app is again in review process for Shopify, WooCommerce. That's kind of the first iteration of what the front end would look like for a merchant to engage with us. That's kind of one channel. Then we've got the APIs and these kind of very basic set of kind of front end components that any enterprise entity that's again much bigger is not going to be using Shopify. They're going to have their very own custom website, or again they just like have a partner. Maybe it's what did you say earlier, Ian? One of like these rewards or loyalty things that you could plop in, like, oh, okay, I can already configure rewards in like Smile, but hey, here's my new Bitcoin rewards capability. I can just toggle it on. So we would integrate with those kind of partner channels, if you will. And that would be just again more programmatic. They'd have some developer on their side that understands the framework and languages we built this in, and they could add it in. And then maybe to your point from like the consumer side, the dashboard's kind of, and it's just there. It's again pretty simple. Like we just want you to be able to see your historical log of all your rewards, withdraw them if you want. That's pretty much it. We don't want to like overload. We're not really trying to track or see anything. We're not like we don't really care about that. We just want you to get your sats. But we will be working on an actual consumer mobile wallet to where we're doing things kind of definitely the right way in our minds, but doing it in a way where the end user doesn't even have to think about it. Again, we kind of mentioned that you would get the email and then be able to like have the option to withdraw your sats. Not to get like too technical, but we'll have a way where the second you are done with that checkout, and you can go and claim your your sats back or whatever, you would just click that button. It would actually take you to an instant app or an app clip in iOS or Android, and we would actually go ahead and create you a wallet, back it up, seed phrase and all, and then you would get your sats immediately within just one tap. So you're not like all that onboarding friction of it scares a ton of people off of I don't care what 12 or 24 words are. I don't even care to know, to be honest. Like I just want my reward. Yeah, that's again like 99% of people, that's all they're going to care about. So we're like, all right, how do we just, literally automate and abstract all that complexity away? That'll be coming, but probably more towards the end of the year. It's mobile wallets are a pretty big build. They're not easy.
All right. So you guys seem very like passionate about what you do. You're very enthusiastic. You keep doing your research and wanting to, better the experience for both the merchants and the consumers. What are the next steps, do you think, for you guys in order to, take the this service to the next level? What is the next level? Where do you see those rewards? I mean, I know we kind of covered it throughout, but if you could just tell me very briefly, like, where do you see Joltz Rewards getting to?
Yeah, I think like those three big pieces. So our first product launch being these kind of e-commerce platform integrations. Scaling that is really kind of the stage we're at there. So we would love to see several hundred, online merchants using this over the next, year or so. So that's one big pillar. The second is delivering that same technology through our APIs to where these bigger, retailers that maybe already have their own app can just plop those in. So we would love to, over the next year, have a couple of those kind of bigger wins, because that really is going to open up a massive, opportunity. And for those listening that may have, may be familiar with like MicroStrategy, right? This is Michael Saylor's, he still serves as the chairman. Michael Saylor obviously has gone all in on Bitcoin, and MicroStrategy in their recent conference announced like Lightning Rewards. They're taking a little bit of a different spin on it than we are, but it's very nice to see this huge Fortune 500 company with, sort of confirming our thesis about where all this is heading. So that would be like kind of the second pillar. And then as Steven said, the consumer side app really is just to make all of that as easy as possible for the consumer. So I would say a year from now, we hope to be live in a number of these, much larger retailers with, non-Bitcoin folks getting converted to Bitcoin in a very, very easy fashion. So that would be the goal.
Yes, because you wanna get the masses off zero.
Correct. Critical, right? Critical. People talk, exactly. You nailed it. I mean, people talk about Bitcoin as a life raft, and I think that is unfortunately an increasingly accurate way to view this thing. And any new form of money is going to have a distribution problem, in the sense of like, how do you get this out to people? And you're just not going to have people go get themselves set up on a centralized exchange or a peer-to-peer platform where they can buy and sell Bitcoin. Like, most are just not going to do it. But what everyone is already doing is they're buying things every day from entities. Exactly. So like that's the way to get people's first sats into their hands, and from there it's hopefully the sky's the limit.
Yeah,
I'd say too, from like the merchant's perspective as well, it's something that we don't talk about like too much, just because it's not as flashy. But getting merchants off of zero in terms of like, again, not the Bitcoin, the asset, but actually the network itself. Again, maybe a different approach to it, but when we want to onboard a merchant, for example, we want to actually help grow the Lightning network. So when someone signs up for Joltz, we're actually going to spin them up their own little Lightning node, in the cloud. We partner with Voltage and some of the other entities in the space, but you would actually have your own kind of dedicated Lightning node, so that you can fund it, you can open channels, send transactions, and again, as merchants come on board, they're helping the Lightning network grow, because the consumer side, that's just not going to happen until you can get somehow a Lightning node on your phone, maybe in the browser. There's some other flavors of it, but I think that that's critically important to help the network grow as well. And I don't know, my 150-yard Hail Mary would always be like, is there a way, one day down the line where you actually start seeing like in consumer products, like integrating Lightning nodes into their products? I've always thought like, when's going to be the day where Verizon or like it creates a router, or Dell, some of these hardware providers and laptops, where they just start mass producing and selling nodes as well. Because right now it's just Bitcoin companies, and you saw some of the other entities kind of get into the space around like ASIC chips and things like that. But I kind of wishful thinking for me is, how can you get these brands to start actually integrating nodes or node capabilities, maybe even like POSs. I know Jack has Square, so that could be pretty cool. You never know, every POS has a Lightning node in it. So something like that I think would be pretty cool too. Maybe just a couple years down the road, never know.
Cool. Well, I think we've come to an end, guys, with our lovely conversation. Thank you so much for joining us at this podcast, and not just joining us, you're our lovely sponsored as well. So I hope we managed to get the word out there, and like Ian said, the sky is the limit. I hope all the best for Joltz Rewards. Thank you guys.
Pleasure. Thanks for having us on, Eleonora.
Yes, we really appreciate it.